thank you for your excellent presentations yesterday. It was a very full and rich experience. Even a little tired, maybe. Please excuse us for the long day, but they were so important. And, even the Skypes were very vivid with so many questions, but unfortunately, we hadn't time to discuss yesterday. So one of our targets today is to discuss yesterday's experience and presentations. But first, we have today Professor Wang Tianen from Shanghai University. Professor Tianen will present his paper on understanding cultural borders and border cultures on the level of their underlying stipulations. Please, Professor.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. Glad I'm here at last. Sorry for missing yesterday's conference I had from Professor Dan. It's very great. I'm also sorry for take time of this long paper today. I'm going to talk about is understanding. I need to change, I think, 20 minutes? 20 minutes. Yeah. So I short it. Change the title, Understanding what the culture on the level of discretion. I have been doing some kind of investigation on stipulations. There are two kinds of stipulations, thinking stipulations and acting stipulations. Hegel did a very good job about this, especially on thinking speculation. I have a lot of notes on Hegel, but basically we can say something about the relation between stipulation and culture and culture border and border cultures. Usually we make some basic stipulations just because something is inevitable in certain concrete conditions. I think that's one of the most important things found by Hegel. These kind of stipulations are useful just in the concrete conditions. And they are also very important, but it does not mean something is inevitable means only in certain concrete conditions. It does not mean we cannot take it for granted. So there is a problem about stipulation. The problem is the nationality, because we ignore the rationality of stipulation. That's Hegel's idea, I think. Stipulation is so important. It's not only related to culture borders and border cultures. It's also related to the philosophical foundation of logic. So I think it's a basic problem we should discuss. As for the foundation of logic, inevitable relation system is all kinds of nature of theory. It's a very important thing, I think. We can build any kind of inevitable relation system based on any kind of stipulations. So it's, I think it's a very important basic facts. So we can produce some kind of strange logic. I call it mad logic, perhaps. Fascist is one of the example. It's relational. Just you just look at the relation system, but the stipulation it based on is irrational. So it's a very strange thing. I think we can get such kind of conclusions. One of them, I think, rationality of relation, some kind of relation system, can based on irrationality of stipulation. That's strange, but that's very important. We don't know even sometimes. The problem is not about the theory itself. It's about the basic or premise of the theory. Actually, in China, I think there happens these kind of things. When we look back, we think it's unthinkable. But next time, we think is irrational, and we can understand. So in this way, we can get some relative ideas. One of them is culture gene. Actually, some kind of stipulation, some kind of culture based on it is some kind of culture gene. The culture gene is different. The Western and the East, the Chinese culture and Western culture is different. The difference already said depends on the basic stipulation. I think as a relation system, it's almost the same, understandable, but at least some of the stipulations cannot understand each other. I think that's one of the problem of culture, and also the problem of for the cultures, also culture borders. An inevitable related system, it must be understandable, but not the stipulation as its premise or as basic ideas. So I think there is something we can talk about culture border and border cultures. Culture gene is very important, all kinds of culture gene, because variety is the most important thing, I think, about development of culture. There is no variety, there is no progress of culture. So any culture in the world, human being, is equal, I think. It's equal. And all the culture genes is very important for us, just like the genes, the plants, and any kind of things. This on the one hand, but at the other hand, on the other hand, we can think we have to deal with the differences or the different stipulations because different cultures based on them. So if we want to communicate well, we must understand the all kinds of culture. What they based on is, we must understand the different stipulations underlying different cultures. I got a PT, I think, but I have no time to go to detail, I think. But we'll join your discuss about non-table, because recently I have been doing some kind of work, mainly focused on philosophy of information, including philosophy of big data, philosophy for artificial intelligence, and so on, especially information civilization. I think it's a different human civilization. So both the cultures and the cultural borders is also different. I think it's a totally different time. In this time, when we talk about the borders of culture and the cultural borders, we have to or must on the level of information instead of only on the level of ideas or concepts. I think it's quite different. So we can understand each other better than only based on some ideas. If we can communicate based on information, the basic level, we can understand more, understand better to each other, even not only home culture. We can fully understand or understand better about robots or super intelligent. That's I think that's our task in this time. So culture, not only human culture, we face some kind of new culture, machine culture. I think it's soon, it comes soon. I think the time is important for us to talk about. I will put my some other ideas when we discuss on the round table. Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, a presentation from one of the most biggest cities in the world, Shanghai. So if you are living in Shanghai, you have to talk about the culture of the
everywhere
machine,
in the world. I think everywhere it's the same.
Yeah, but especially there. Yeah. And you have a special understanding because the novelties, technical, many of these technical novelties are developed in your career. Thank you very much, Professor. Okay. So I'm proposing two things for the round table. First will be, as I mentioned, the discussion of this paper and the other papers of yesterday, and we'll have a kind of more or less free way of talking, so you can address questions to the other papers, or you can raise some points as Professor Tianen said. And then I hope to be enough times for two questions. One question is coming from Wang, because we didn't present our papers yesterday. Deconstructing cultural borders, the role of travel, and the role of travel writers can be one question, and mine, cultural border as the place of encountering the other. So this can be two guidelines for the last part of our discussion today. So please now, if maybe we can start with some questions to Professor Tianen, and then to move to the other papers of yesterday. So please. So it is, my question will be, it is real possible a machine culture? What is the meaning of this kind of concept?
I think just like the director of Institute Future Home and Future Institute of Home and Future in Oxford, the director, he published a book about super intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is something very important because we can see the tooling port regularity is coming. When it seems be soon we can confront some kind of different culture. For example, in Facebook, there is some machine to talk about help people to communication, but they think human language English is not so convenient because to machine, I think they should have another kind of natural language. It's not our natural language because it's our language. It's a anthropological, not machine. It's not suited for machine. So, human intelligence based on chemical mechanism is not the best one, perhaps, because we have the advantage because we can produce in envelope in naturally or in the naturally, because the machine is not based on the chemical mechanisms, but they based on another kind of mechanism.
So do you think they can develop their own way of
very fast
interaction?
They can go very fast, much faster than us. So when they will produce their own culture, I think. So we must talk another kind of culture borders between human culture and machine cultures. Soon or later, perhaps it's already begun.
I find that just fanciful. I just don't think.
Somebody said that.
I mean, machine culture, a machine having culture. I mean, one that assumes some kind of consciousness, which, well, we don't even know what it is ourselves. So how can we know that a machine's going to have culture? Look, a very simple response to some of this is to say, my 10-year-old grandson, he makes fun of Siri and asking questions. So when Siri asks, "What's your name?" he says, "My butt." Now, so Siri, because it's a machine, says, "Well, my butt, what's your question?" And he laughs himself hysterical about this machine calling him my butt. So, what does that tell us? What it tells us is that machines are computing. They're very good at they're computing and counting kinds of things. They work on ones and zeros. Now, despite what some
feeling.
They can't have feelings. They
emotions.
but the main point is that they are only able to do things which are computable. Anything that's non-computable, a machine simply cannot do. And there are, when my example of, you know, Corp says to Siri, my name's my butt, and Siri says, oh, well, my butt, this and this, and every time he asks a question, she responds and said, well, my butt, it's, and he just rolls around laughing. Now, what that's telling us is that once you build a certain kind of way of thinking into a machine, it's only able to use the logic of ones and zeros. It's binary. Human beings don't work like that. I mean, there are lots of things machines can do. We can't, as you say, compute incredibly quickly. We'll never be able to compute as quickly as that. But there are lots of things a machine can't do. They're very simple little programs which show, you know, that non-computability. There's the halting problem, which most programmers are aware of. I'm not a programmer, so I'm not that au fait with. But I do know what the little program looks like, and it's a loop. It tells the computer that if this program is going to keep going, then you ought to halt. So if it's an infinite loop, it tries to halt, but then it tells the thing, if it's non-halting, then don't halt. So, but the program itself is saying, well, halt if it's an infinite loop, don't halt if it's not an infinite loop. But telling it to halt, if it's an infinite loop, it's kind of telling it to do something that can't compute. But we can see it immediately that, you know, there's an infinite loop that's happening, but the computer can't, and they write it in because it's a way of picking up errors in the, and I don't understand this fully, so I may not be explaining it very well. But it's the little programs used to pick up errors in the programming process, so that if you have, by some misfortune, put in a kind of looping program which just keeps going round and round in circles, then this program will pick it up and tell it to halt. But if you tell it, you know, put the program in itself as saying, if you pick up this program, then you are to halt, but it's contradicting itself, so it's not halt, it can't halt. If it halts, then it doesn't have to halt. But if it doesn't halt, then it should halt. So you can see the computer, and that's just one example of non-computability. Human beings immediately can pick that up. Computer can't, because it's just a machine, a program. It's not going to have a culture. Can't have. And who writes the programs? Human beings write the program. It takes us back to that whole question of, you know, in cause and effect. You can't get more in the effect than in the cause. You know, so this notion of bootstrapping, I think, just fails. How can you have a machine which is smarter than its creator? I don't think that works. You just can't.
Yes, that's true, I think, because at present, the machines cannot do a lot of things. And the cycle you mentioned is very important. It's the same mechanism as human intelligence and machine intelligence. But you always say we made a machine or machine made a machine. It's not more intelligible than us. That's true, certainly. But there is a kind of evolution, even evolution of program or evolution of intelligence is terrible, I think. It's the most important thing, I think, is evolution of machine intelligence. We can not make a machine smarter than us. That's impossible. Everything made it cannot go in that way. Only the machine or human being evolution they can get better and better. And when the individuals in a group in the progress of evolution, they will become smarter and smarter.
Yeah, well, this is where, I mean, they're not smarter, and this is where I think we're mistaken in the language we use. Artificial intelligence. They're not really intelligent, they're just machines. And what happens is, you're right about the evolution of programming. Let's face it, we started off with Microsoft, whatever it was, 1.0, and now we're in, sadly, in Windows 10, which is awful. But I don't know whether that's progress. But yes, it's certainly true that, you know, the programming gets better and better. They write different algorithms, but it takes programmers to do that. It's not the machine writing these algorithms, even though there are, you know, some, you know, we talk about, say, the two models in AI, you know, the model of the straight computability, but there's also these neural nets that they talk about, you know, that you can, by constructing and mimicking how human beings learn and in using, I don't understand it completely, but kind of fuzzy logic, a machine, neural nets can in effect enable a machine to kind of learn certain kinds of things. But there are limits to that, you know. Despite what AI tells us, or the people working in it, they haven't got very far in. And look, I worked in philosophy of mind and cognitive science 40 years ago, and I went to a conference not that long ago, and nothing had changed. They were still talking about the same things. And the reason I say that is that I was able to discuss things that I hadn't done for 30, 40 years. And one of the key presenters came to me and said, I don't know you. You're working in this area, and but I've never come across you before. And I said, well, I haven't worked in it for 30 or 40 years or whatever. And it's just what I did way back then. So what really struck me is that the discussions hadn't really moved on anymore. The same kinds of questions that were there 40 years ago were the same questions they've got today. So when 40 years have intervened, you'd think something new might have emerged, but there was nothing particularly new. There's still work. Now, maybe that some of these problems are intractable and you can't solve them. Maybe you need 100 years before some advance, but you kind of expected something to be a little bit different. But there wasn't. It's the same things over and over again. And AI keeps saying.
Yeah. But maybe the point is what that professor tried to say is that maybe it's a border change. Somehow maybe we today are more open to let more room to machines in some aspects, no?
If I can
sense.
have a small intervention. I think there are some technical progresses that might be viewed as a source for real change. I agree 90% with what you have said, but when it comes of quantum computing,
Yeah, that's
okay.
important.
When we face the fact that some limits regarded as very, very hard to surpass in the past, namely the unseparability of the particles. There were some articles written by Einstein, and then there are some research made by Alain Aspect, for instance, or other scientists that proved the fact that two particles that came from the same source are linked in a very, very subtle way, and when we find some information about one of them, the other one also changes its state. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
this limit was very hard to be surpassed. But now, from what I've read, I understood that there are some solutions, technical solutions, that allow us to hope in the future that maybe quantum computers will be a reality. Of course, the possibility of self-programming for a computer is very limited, because it cannot be transient in terms of meaning. We are transient, no? Well, we have a meaning for a word, and depending on the cultural context, we can change it. Computers don't. But I think maybe in the future, the progress in quantum computing and the implementation of fuzzy logic maybe could represent a change or a challenge for what we think now about what a machine can do. Of course, the term cultural machine is for me also pretty hard to cope with, but who knows in the future?
I think it's a bridge too far, but yes, I mean certainly there are advances in quantum computing.
Yes.
They're now beginning to feel that they may be able to use that the separation, those Bell's theorem.
Bell inequalities and so on.
Yeah, look, I think that's entirely possible, but it doesn't get us around. It's about spin up and spin down. That's still binary. It doesn't change anything in that regard. It just makes it more powerful in terms of its ability to compute. They still can't fix the halting problem.
For now, yes, they don't.
Well, not for now. It just can't be. The logic of it is that it can't.
Another way, because as for evolution, there is a lot of ways. One of them is merged together. There are not only evolution of human being, there another evolution of machine. They will merge together. You use a lot of computers,
Yeah.
but I know nothing about computer. So your culture is quite different from mine. Yeah, that's the way, the real way, I think.
Yeah, look,
Could you talk more about the cycle? Because it's
the halting thing.
yeah, it's a very important mechanism.
Yeah, well, it's only one element. It's just one example. There are others. I mean, I'm no expert in all this, but it struck me. I actually wrote it. I couldn't remember it off the top of my head. The little program. I'd have to go and look it up. But you can Google it. It's only a couple of lines of programming, and the computer goes berserk if you put it. It just can't do anything. So yeah, look, there is evolution. I mean, I also would resist the idea that human beings are evolving. Maybe, but look, we haven't changed in 100. We've only been around for 100,000 years. Let's face it. I mean, how can we have changed very much? Give us time. Are we going to be here 1 million years, 2 million years? How long? What scales are we talking about when we say human beings are evolving?
Evolving with machines.
You mean with machines?
Yeah.
I find that implausible. I don't know what that means actually.
Yes, very interesting. Thank you, and thank you, and thank you. In order to relate, to link our discussion about artificial intelligence and our problem of cultural borders and so on, and differences, and our standpoint that the other is different. It was a very, very good interwar Czech writer, Karel Čapek. Karel Čapek, who wrote about the robots, you know the name of robot. And his model, parenthesis, in order to understand things, we human take us as model for machines, as you know, or for biological beings, for plants and animals. We say they feel like us. So feeling is a human word. It's related to a word. So we take us as model for machines. But at the same time, in science, we can take the model of machines or the model of plants or of animals as model for humans. So we can compare these two kinds of models. So I finish this parenthesis. Karel Čapek, writing about robots, he showed, it was a comparison with Nazi Germany, so and the interwar period. So he wrote about national robots. So programs, national robots. So the robots are machines with programs, and the programs were nationalized. You understand me? So one robot was German robot, another robot was French robot, and so on and so on. And the programs said, oh, the French, let's see, is bad, is bad, is bad. The French robot said, oh, the German is bad, is bad, is bad. This was the model of robots, of artificial intelligence. But letting aside this model of Čapek, today we experience the process. You spoke about evolution. This is. We experience a process where the artificial intelligence comes to be able to correct itself. So to learn, the big problem of the big present problem of the artificial intelligence today is to learn, the learning machines and so on and so on. And yes, you was right. 40 years we talk about the same thing. Yes, but now we can pass to another moment when we see that machines are more and more similar to humans, but they are not humans, of course. But they are more and more similar, so they are able to correct themselves. And I finish. So this is a contradiction. National robots versus universal artificial intelligence that can correct itself and so on and so on. But this is a model for humans also. So I was this nation, you were that nation, we are enemies and so on and so on. That was an old model, an interwar model. But now we can experience, I hope, we can experience that we as humans understand more and more that we are all human beings, not only of this nationality or that nationality. This contradiction was very interesting. Now, there are very interesting problems related to the artificial intelligence. You spoke about programs, yes, and now, in this moment, we humans are very proud of us. Oh yes, we make our programs. We are creative. the machines are not. Yes, but just in this moment, there are programs helping the machines to self-correct themselves and to learn themselves. So we are in a transitional epoch from this standpoint.
So maybe we have to move to some other topics because we'll end this table just talking about robots.
But look, I think it's
It
very
was only a
important.
model,
Yeah.
I said.
Very important though to try and understand the difference between what a human being is, a human person, and a machine. I mean, yes, certainly we've now developed ways in which there are machines which can learn, so they're based on neural nets. But neural nets are not the same as way human beings work. The kinds of neural nets that work in human beings are far more powerful and far differently based for a start. I mean, one of the things that you have to understand is that basing a model on kind of electronic sorts of things is assuming that the process that's occurring here, that it's the same thing, that what we're doing is exactly the same thing, and we're not. It's a fundamental mistake to think that there's some connection, that whatever we mimic here and copy is the same as what's happening here. They're just two different things. And I say that because, and it's not just in terms of these mechanical kinds of things. It's also the thing about what we can do in, let's say, creating animal-human hybrids. So, okay, a kidney, I'll grow it in a pig, or a heart in a pig. What's going on here? By snipping, we can do all kinds of gene cuts and all that kind of stuff. Now, there are serious ethical questions about this that go to the heart of what it is to be a human person. So this is one of the reasons I get, you know, we have to be very, very careful about how we talk about machines and human beings, because we're very good at anthropomorphizing things. You know, this, my dear, you know, mobile phone. You know, I can't do without it. I love it so. I mean, we do this all the time to inanimate objects, to our pets, all kinds of things. It's a tendency human beings have. But we have to be careful. So, well, it is only a mobile phone, so if I break it, it's not going to go, ooh, that hurt. You know, and if I say, well, it won't work properly, it's not going to be upset, despite what Siri might say.
Yes.
But I think this is a really fundamental.
I agree with you. I agree with you, but we have to be careful with your notion evolution. Yes, in this moment, it doesn't say it hurt me, of course, but
maybe in the future.
In future, so
that's what I'm resisting. I'm saying that's
yes,
just nonsense.
That's
yeah,
not, it's not the same.
No,
It's not the same.
It's not the same.
It's not the
it's
same.
not
It's
the
not the
same.
same.
It's not the same. It's different. I only wanted to to say that yes, the humans are humans, but at the same time, and the robots, the machines are machines, are instruments, are tools, and so on. But yes, but as, for example, people wrote with the pencil some very, very simple things a thousand years ago, and now with the same pencil, the human writes very, very complicated ideas. We can conceive that our machines, which are our tools, our instruments, will be more and more able to transpose, yes, our sentiments, our ideas, and so Professor made the difference between the information and ideas. Yes,
Yes, may I say a few words about that topic? I suggest, I agree with your idea. We had better go back to the topic for the roundtable.
Sure.
I think it's meaningful just now to discuss. Why? Because we want to redefine culture for us. why we needed to do this? I think because there are some new phenomena of culture and group of different kind of phenomena. So that's the robot and the cyber and some others. That's one of the new phenomena. And its influence is very big, and also maybe emerging some new culture related. Actually, I think it's hard to see totally new culture, but at least it influenced some people, some group, some levels, behavior, their production, their mind, their communication. So you can see that's a kind of new cultural phenomenology. So we should deal with such kind of problem, but that's only one aspect. But on the another aspect, maybe we needed to give this topic more viewpoint from different angles. So I admire this through intercultural encounters. That means we did not really focus on the single culture, but focus on the cross-cultural studies. Why we should focus on such kind of program? I think originally, actually different cultures stayed in different locations geographically and different ethics, different group. There is no communication. So you are you, you are you. There is no communication, no contradiction, no conflict, no struggle. So, but when they go abroad, not abroad, and when they leave, when they go into some other discipline or district or different country, they find the difference. Usually the people may think difference is good, but sometimes difference become a problem and they cause the different kind of things. I think at least 5 problems. First is the nature. The culture is based on the geographic angle or elements. In the past, if I stayed in Asia, you stayed in Europe, that's South Africa. Each of us use the land, use the fruit, use the animal to let us can live. But now we find that the resources is so limited. You own more, I own less. You own this good, I own that not useful. That's become a kind of the new problem. Actually, different nation has a special right. That means the natural right become a kind of political right, diplomatic right, and the economic right, and the cultural right. So I think this is one element need us to think. We need redefine this because in the globalization, but is still in the globalization we seems think that everything is equal, but the pre-foundation is not equal because you own different natural resources. That's become a serious problem for Middle East and many different locations. This is the second. The second one is about the ethnics. Different people, different color, different. You know why Mexican people cannot go into U.S. because they're different nationality. Because this become a problem. Different president, different politics may have such kind of different attitude to this. That's the rationalism. That's especially become the modern problem. We never think about this. That's human beings' nature, but now become a kind of special culture. The third one is, I think, the economic developing way. Because all the culture should be based on the foundation, how can you develop yourself? And based on this, you can find the rational foundation of your culture. But now you may find that after 500 years market economic system. But now we seems to find that liberalism and I can see the government interpreted the economic movement and the different ideas they contradicted, and this includes different people, different countries. And the fourth is actually the country. Yesterday I mentioned that the function of the country is not weak in the globalization, but strong, and strong, because the country, the border, the political border, is the final and the most clear border to stop the different culture, different economic development, different ethics, and the resource ownership. And I think the last one, the fifth, is the main. How do you identify yourself? Different country, different people. We, in the past, you know, in China, especially 40 years ago, when we started the reform and the open door policy, we seems right, and there are some scholars, they said we should totally give up ourselves. We should totally go into the Western world. In Chinese, we call it 全盘西化, or like that. We think everything in China in the history is not good. We want to totally start, everything started to the West, but finally we found out we cannot start so many. We should keep something. So there are some strong debate on this, 西体中用 or 中体西用. That means we should base it on Western political system, or we just use Western technology, science, industry, and some others. So that's really give us the debate. Based on these 5 flavors, we should define the culture and the boundaries of the culture. So I think that's really the time that gave us the new problem. We should think and deal such kind of things. Especially now, you may find, yesterday I also mentioned the Trump. Sorry for always, but he is the one of the representative. Always let the people think who is who. You are you. You are not me. Only I myself got the benefit, the biggest benefit. So every country have to redefine their position in the world. This really gave us, so I think there are many things we needed to talk. Thank you. I just, for this topic, thank you very much.
Very, very, very good point. We can develop on this aspect.
If I may say something on the topic, I would say that China nowadays might be a good example of understanding the flaws of Western culture and exploiting them. In my opinion, what happened in the last 25 years is a disindustrialization of Western world due to a trick. Westerns were invited to collaborate with Chinese system, but the final stage was not in their favor, meaning that they lost their upper hand in technology, and little by little they do go down. They go down on this stair. So not a progress, but an involution, I would say. But it's not the fault of Chinese system. It's the weakness of Western civilization. And I agree with you that maybe it's the time to rethink the place of each country in the world, because people like Donald Trump, but also like Putin, in my opinion, are not ready to open their mind, to think about the possibility of having a multi-political world. It's just a binary way of thinking the relation between states, and in my my opinion, you triggered a chain of problems. Speaking about culture, actually, I think we can think about politics as an effect of cultural change. I'm not sure we are ready to investigate deep enough this problem, but I appreciate very much your perspective.
Yes, and of course the complexity of understanding is due to the cultural background. So let's see how is the Indian perspective.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, we have two professors from India.
Yeah.
You are neighbors, more or less.
Yes. Wait a minute.
Neighbors by 1,000 kilometers. No, in India, there is a whole understanding of the reality is circular. The whole reality, no? We call it cycles. That's why we have the understanding of human beings. It's a cycle of birth and rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is cycle. So that cycle, how many years? It could be thousands and thousands of years. So we are in a what we call yuga. Yuga is a frame or a moment in this cycle. Now, in this cycle, this may be good, may not be good. So right now we are saying Kali Yuga. So which means it is more on the negative aspect. Now, if you look at the frame of understanding of culture in this cyclic aspects, it will be contraposition to Western idea of unilateral or linear understanding of history and culture. So it's different, all things different. But the beauty of Indian structure is, it's not repetitive. The cyclic is not repetitive. The cycle is always moving, and therefore new and new cycles. So it is not the same circle, but it's a circular movement of the new elements. So that is the beauty of Indian understanding. That is why Indian understanding of culture and civilization is always inclusive. Vasudeva Kudumbaka. This is, we look at everything as part of a family, which means the understanding of culture and the real differences of culture or the cultural borders are there, but doesn't matter. And so they should be there. So what will happen here is the understanding of the Indian perspective would be, if I could put it from Vedic perspective or even from Nastika perspectives, the understanding here is these are all okay, fine. The differences are okay. And as long as there are human beings and things are moving forward, it will keep. And therefore, I think all this idea of machine or any other aspect of development is not the same in Indian perspective. It is not the same in Chinese perspective. It is not the same in Western perspective. So we as philosophers, I always realize, is to understand how the same reality is being expounded from the time of old, but always put in a new perspective. I'm able to understand that every time I come for a table conference here or a conference or a seminar, I get something new, something different, which can be included, which can be, taken along. This is what I find that. So there may be some differences, but that is okay. It's okay, and I find that.
So maybe we should at some point to find some paradigms.
Exactly.
The Chinese, the Indian, the Jew,
Yes.
Romanian maybe.
Yes. Maybe, yeah, that's very good.
Yeah,
Very good idea.
Australian, of course. But Latvian,
Latvian.
Austrian, Latvian.
Well, can I just say, look, on the point you make, I think one of the problems in the West is that it's all Hegel's fault. Well, not Hegel, but the 19th century and Darwinianism, the whole idea of progress, were very big in the 19th century in the West. That we are progressing is partly Hegel's fault, because he was kind of the person who invented that when he talked about history. The notion of history is progressing. And so we have this idea all the time that, we're much smarter now than we were 50 years ago, much smarter than 100 years ago, because we can see, well, look at this. We didn't have this kind of phone 20 years ago. It had a different shape, and you see old films from the 80s. It's great bricks. I'll get my mobile out. You know, there's. Okay, so we see here's this progress. We're getting smarter and smarter and cleverer. So I think we forget that life is cyclic. I mean, you read, for example, Edwin Gibbon's The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire. There's an understanding that in that where the civilization rises and falls, and if we look at history all over the world, civilizations rise and they fall. So what makes us think that there aren't cycles, you know? And sometimes the cycles are very bad, but you know, if we're in the West in a process of decline, as some people would say, is this going to be a catastrophic decline, or is it just going to be there's going to be a change? I mean, one thing we haven't mentioned, we talked about, you know, Romanian culture and Latvian culture and all kinds. What about European? What about the EU as a bloc? What's that giving us? I mean, is this something? I mean, okay, the British are going to go out very stupidly, but anyway, the British have always been a bit strange. So what's the European project all about? You know, what's that mean for local culture? I know people hate Brussels with good reason. Not because they hate Brussels, the town or the culture, but we're talking about, you know, European imposing quotas and all this kind of thing. There's rules coming out of somewhere, and the effect that has on local places. So there's a tension there, and what does that mean? What does it mean about in, you know, the rise of you know, separatist movements? You know, the Catalans that suddenly said, I think we want to be a separate country. The Basques are saying that as well. But they're not the only ones. Are we seeing in the European project, is this something else that's developing into it? And what does that mean? You know, is it that there's a separate culture now being identified? You know, that we're not Spanish, we're Catalan, or we're Irish, we're not British, or we're Scottish, not English, and so on. What's that all about? I mean, so the European project.
I think we should talk about presuppositions. As
A bit about what?
Edwin mentioned, presuppositions, assumptions.
Assumptions.
Cultural
yeah,
assumptions. Cultural
Presuppositions.
Because I think we've already discovered a major difference in this perspective from the Chinese and from the Indians. Because I think probably the assumption in the Indian culture is more related to spirituality in a certain kind of, as much as I can understand, based on cycles, no?
Yeah.
So this inclusive attitude, you know, it's a kind of integrating and moving in a new circle, no? By integrating. So in this case, the effect at the human level. We are talking about relearning to be human, no? So what is the effect at the human level? It's not the same for an Indian, it's not the same for a Chinese. So this difference it will be always, I think. Because we can see very easily this difference. Professor Wang Kang cannot think as Professor Edwin George. No.
Why not? I do not understand.
Probably you already saw.
Actually,
Professor Wang said about 5 aspects, no? It was very clear for me, including practically the dynamic through the economic, political, including all aspects, no? But here is a cycle.
yeah, that's the
Working
different,
by integration.
totally different viewpoint to the world, different customers. Yeah, because you know, from the India they think the soccer. If there is a soccer, that means what can human being to do? It's automatically. no matter you do what, it's automatically also. So it's a progress, but it's a return. So actually in China, we do not agree such kind of viewpoint to the world. We think the evolution is good, the development is good.
Evolution in one sense,
In one
just
sense.
as a process.
Yes.
Evolution,
But-
yeah, but it's the progress, it's a
Mhm.
progress. But in this process, some period, some stages can also go back, can also have some problem. And especially in China, we ask for every person, you should play your role as more as possible. Then the subject can get the progress. It's not automatically. It's not natural. It's based on human being's life. How do you work? How do you get? You work hard, and you have enough wisdom, then you can get the good benefit. But if there is not, you will share the worst result. That's why yesterday I asked for the great wisdom. That's Chinese perspective. That's different.
Yeah, so I think we reach now the very point of our project. The role of encountering the other, no? The role of intercultural encounter in relearning to be human. So, this is just a question. Can you borrow something when do you meet the other, the culture other, or you just translate in your own way of understanding, of experiencing your humanity? So I think yesterday, more or less, it appeared this question. Even John Farina and some other tried to push in a way or in another way, in a direction or in another direction. Because one assumption, I think this is a European assumption made by Enlightenment movement in the 18th century, that it's a kind of universal. It's a kind of universality of our human way of being, and this was probably it was based on the idea that our fundamental way of being is mathematical, is somehow rational, mathematical way of understanding the world. So we should be more and more one way of dealing with us and with reality. So somehow I think this assumption is more or less ended now, because we faced a very different reality, including Europe now. So the question of encountering the other, the cultural other, I think now is the big question. What is happening? So for this reason, I think we will continue this kind of approach in the next years, because it seems that there is more